Hello there, I'm Christine Bentley in studio with Sharon Caddy, and we are joined by dating coach and #1 best-selling author of Is It Any Wonder You're Single? Everything You Wish You Knew About Landing Mr. Right. Welcome, Paul Meredith.
Thank you very much, Christine. Happy to be here again.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too.
A fresh start for a lot of people, so a lot of people have probably been asking themselves about their relationships. And we're going to talk today about how to figure out if you're stuck in a relationship with the wrong person. And Paul, we all know that men and women read those signs very differently. So, over to you.
Okay. Well, the first thing, of course, you have to ask yourself is if you're happy in the relationship that you're in. Because a lot of times, if you are in the wrong relationship, the signs can be there, and you just have to recognize them. Like if you have any sort of anxiety surrounding your relationship, you really shouldn't have anxiety. The relationship shouldn't be emotionally draining. It should be emotionally energizing. Right? You should be excited to see that person. You shouldn't have to feel like you have to change yourself to be more adaptive to him. You should feel like you can be yourself around that person.
But sometimes does the fear of being alone outweigh the fear of being with the wrong person?
And that happens all the time, where people are afraid of being alone, or they don't think that they can find anyone better, or that they just don't want to jump into the whole dating scene again.
And I get that.
Right? So they end up settling for a mediocre relationship. They're thinking that things might not be as good if they move on to try to find someone else. But by doing that, you're depriving yourself of happiness. And you're not only doing that, you're ripping off the person that's out there right now looking for you, who is probably the ideal person for you, and they are out there looking for you. But by staying in the relationship with the wrong person, you're keeping that person away.
Well, in my experience, I have been in relationships where in hindsight, looking back, I spent way too much energy managing it as opposed to just enjoying it. But at the time, in my head, there's a message saying, it takes work. You have to work at a good relationship. So somehow that got mutated into managing something which really was so difficult. I shouldn't have been. It was like putting a square peg into a round hole, but I didn't see it at the time.
Yeah, but I think, and a good relationship, I think you'd agree, Paul, a good relationship, it does take constant, I don't want to call it work, I want to call it updating or renewing, but it should be fun.
It has to be fun. Because if it's not fun, there's something wrong.
If it is actually quote unquote work.
Right. It shouldn't feel like work. Any relationship will take a little bit of effort to put into it.
For sure.
Right? You have to communicate. That's extremely important. And it shouldn't feel stressful. Right? If it feels stressful, it's wrong. It should be liberating, and you should feel happy, and you should feel alive. Because if you're not feeling these things, then it's probably time to start looking for something else. And you can't let that fear of being alone trap you.
Now, do you think women in particular take loyalty to the extreme, or do they stay with the wrong person for different reasons?
Well, I think there's a number of reasons why someone might stay with the wrong person, right? It's a lot of times it's wishful thinking, right? They're hoping that he's going to change, or they're hoping that things are going to change, or they're hoping that things are going to get better. But, if you want to take a good look at how your relationship is going to be in the future, and you can just take a look at how it's been. If you've been with the person for, say, a year, look at how your relationship's been for the past year. Chances are that the next year is not going to be much different. So if barring that no changes are made. So if you keep going on and doing the same thing that you've done for the past year, chances are this is going to continue happening.
So just because he's there doesn't mean he's into you?
No, not at all. I was the king of wasting women's time. I know what it's all about, right? And there are so many guys that will waste your time, and they'll waste your time for as long as you let them.
My observation has always been that men will stay in a bad relationship until they find another relationship. And once that is solid, then they leave. Women in my experience, seem to more often than not leave if they're not happy. They don't necessarily have to have
Right.
something else to go to. But a lot of men I've observed, they'll cultivate another relationship on the side before they will leave.
And that can happen quite frequently too. They'll be looking while they're with this person, so you have to look out for those kinds of signs. How often is he seeing you? How often are you communicating with them? Like, especially when, in the early stages of a relationship, you particularly have to pay attention to these things. Are you only seeing him once a week? Is he returning your texts right away? Or is there taking an excessive amount of time to get back to you? Is he limiting when he sees you? Because a guy can keep a woman at arm's length and keep her chasing after him. And meanwhile, he doesn't really have any interest in her other than a plaything.
Yeah.
Right? So you've got to be aware of these things. You have to look for these kinds of signs, and you have to be careful what you're telling yourself. You have to be careful what you may be justifying.
So what are the biggest mistakes that people make and shouldn't make if they're in the wrong or in a relationship with the wrong person? Maybe you realize it. What do you do then?
Okay, so I mean, if you realize, okay, hey, I'm in a relationship with the wrong person. I mean, obviously, by staying, and I say obviously, but in many cases, it's the elusive obvious, right? It seems like it would be obvious, but yet you're trying to justify, you're trying to maybe come up with reasons why you should stay that person, or why you might be being too hasty, or you might think, oh, maybe I won't find anyone else, or maybe I won't find anyone better, and it has a lot to do with how you feel about yourself too, and your own worthiness, because you have to feel like you're worthy of something better. You have to love yourself who you are, and so once you become aware of it, I mean, you're not doing yourself or him or the guy out there who's looking for you right now, who you are meant to be with. You're not doing them any favors. You're not doing yourself any favors, and you're not doing the guy you're with any favors.
I really believe, though, like I asked earlier, is that I think women sometimes get we are so afraid of not having a date to our company Christmas party. We're so afraid of having to spend a few evenings on our own that we let ourselves stay there.
Mm-hmm. And a good way to feel better about that is to stay busy in your life. Stay busy with your close friends. When you get into a relationship with somebody that you really like, you can't start putting these things on the side. You've got to continue with your life as well. Mm-hmm. The way it's been, if you go to dance class, if you go to art class, if you go to whatever it is that you love to do, playing volleyball, you want to keep up with these things all the time because they take your mind off of it, and they're the things that you enjoy, and by continuing to enjoy these things, it makes it easy to go back into the singles pool, mm-hmm. because you have other enjoyable things in your life, and you're always around these other opportunities to meet other men.
One thing that really surprises me, Paul, because I know that lots of people stay with people that they're in the wrong relationship with, but the number of seniors divorcing is skyrocketing. Mm-hmm. So maybe we need to learn something from them, because their chances of maybe finding somebody else would seem to be less, and yet they're not afraid at some point to be alone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think in a lot of cases it's because they finally realize, okay, enough is enough. This isn't the right relationship.
Wasted enough time.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Wasted enough time. And I think a lot of women, they might end up settling at a young age because they have that biological clock ticking, right? And they just want to be with someone so badly. Anybody, right? Just give me a relationship, give me a baby, and they settle.
And a white picket fence.
Exactly, exactly. But, you can have who you want, but you have to be clear on what it is that you want, and you have to be clear on what it is that you're attracted to, because a lot of times you might think you want a specific man, but then what you're attracted to is something completely different. So it's so important to make sure that these things are in alignment with one another.
Yeah.
Great advice.
It is excellent
Oh.
advice. I do want to mention, though, right now, and not relating to this particular topic, but if you're sitting out there at home and you're thinking, that was a cool topic, but what I really want to know about is this, I want to invite our listeners to send us notes. Send us, it can be on Twitter, it can be on our Facebook. Go to WhatSheSaidRadio.com. Send us a note with questions you'd like Paul to answer, because in future weeks we can present those and answer your questions.
Well, absolutely. And we will give you next week, we will give you a call-in number. And if you're sitting at home and you want to ask Paul a question, absolutely. He's the expert.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Paul, for coming in today. And Paul's book, Is It Any Wonder You're Single, can be bought on Amazon.com and Amazon.ca. You might want to have a read through that. I found it fascinating.
Look at you.
Yeah. I'm rereading it and rereading it.
Thanks so much.
Coming up next, our own Ann Brody reviews the weekend box office. This is What She Said on Canada Talk, Sirius XM. Stay with us.